Has anybody ever, for your icebreaker, asked you if you couldn't be doing what you're doing today, right? You can't be a CMO, you can't even work in tech unless you do something completely different. What would you be?
It hasn't been for a while, but I have a standard answer.
What is it?
I'd be a barista in a coffee shop.
See, that I love that about you. God damn it. That is perfect. What about you, Matt?
Mine's reasonably similar. I would work at Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Really?
There's coffee there
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. It's quiet. There's coffee. Like, it doesn't really seem like those guys are working all that hard. Apologies to any Barnes and Noble employees that may be listening, but it's such a chill environment.
And nobody goes to the library anymore. They go to Barnes and Noble. But they're not around as much.
On the barista side, I used to say if I could just own like a local bar where not because I just want to be around drinking or anything like that, but where like,
People come and hang out.
yeah, like you just realize like if you had a job that created that vehicle where people could at least just come and talk for 30, 45 minutes, I think that's amazing. It's probably a really hard business to manage, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you just took this idea that you could communicate, you could like every night you'd either meet someone new or catch up with someone old. Like, I think that's great. So,
Aw.
Was that the official opener? Are we starting?
From ABM to PLG, from medic to medpic, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundsen, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started.
in my old days at Topo, I worked with a lot of folks, including Matt. And I just remember Sydney had gone to Sales Loft, and I saw like just this incredible business person. I still have our text where I did this workshop with, oh no, she just did this launch. I'm like, you're one of the best CMOs I know, and I know a lot of them. It was like, I just was so, it's like, a lot of times we look from afar, but actually I was in there and I just saw not just a marketer, but like a business officer that like came in and brought that business to the next level. And I got to see it live, and I've always been impressed. And as a result, we worked together in your in between before you became the CMO of Drata. And it's like, it's like awesome to have you on the show. We wanted to wait a little bit so it wasn't obvious that we were only bringing our friends and favorites. So we did a couple shows, and now we have you. Today's guest, everyone, is Sydney Sloan, one of the best CMOs we know and one of the best business people we know. Everyone, applause. Clap, 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 clap. All right. Matt used to have a clapper.
I used to have a clapper, it broke. Yeah. Yeah, I've always admired Sydney, all the way back to our days at Al Fresco, where I first became aware of you, just because you were just such a powerhouse there. And then I loved the team at SalesLoft and was a longtime SalesLoft power user. So you joined there and did such incredible work, and sort of admired your career from afar for a long time. And then we had this awesome opportunity to work together with Craig at scale, which was literally the highlight of my career. I felt like I was like existing on an all-star team, because you never get to work with other CMOs hand in hand on a day-to-day basis. And I just learned so much from the time that we spent working together. Just I have such an admiration for you as a professional and as a person. And now Craig and I will break you down and find out what you're really made of.
If people could only know how much fun we had together at the beginning. And I'd love to say we were the OGs, the inaugural crew. And 100% back at both of you, like inspired by, learn from. I swear there was a Topo slide in every single one of my slide decks that had a Craig Rosenberg quote on it. And just same back at you. Love you both.
Should we end the show? Because this was really great.
I think that's a wrap. I think that's a wrap. We've done it.
So here's the question we start every show with, which is, what's something that the market thinks they're doing right today, methodology, best practice, approach, that they're actually wrong, and they should take a different approach, and what should that be?
So it's actually your fault, Craig.
I know.
I'm going to say this. So here's what I think has changed. And then if people are still doing an account-based approach, I think they're doing it wrong.
Whoa,
Ooh.
radical and right in my face, God.
I've been an advocate for a very, very long time. And here's where I think it has changed. So I don't think it's about accounts anymore. I think it's about segments.
Oh, well,
Mm.
that's great. I love that.
So I think people are getting much better at identifying like ICPs and then segments within those. So you don't actually have to do account specific. You can get as good looking at segment based strategies. And I think that you can build all your materials to a very finite segment that could be 100 accounts, 200 accounts, but it's the segment, not the account level strategy. And then you teach your teams how to do, personalization and stuff like that. But I don't think you need to do the one-to-one anymore. I don't think you have to do like the, top tier custom landing pages, blah, blah, blah. Like I think segment is good enough.
Interesting. Interesting. How would you define a segment at this point? Because I think a lot of people will listen to what you said and say verticalization.
Which is, yeah, which is, I don't know if I think Thomas Zung or Jason recently wrote like vertical SaaS has a higher return than non-vertical SaaS. I read it like in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, vertical can absolutely be, but I would say a segment can be defined as like let's say the triangulation of 3 data points. So it could be industry, it could be buyer, and I think it should be pain point.
Mm.
So you at least have something, like to align to. It could be technology. So like at Drata, we did an awesome deal with the team from Know Before, and now we're triangulating that with AWS. We have Know Before plus AWS plus Pain Point, which is they're end of lifing that product. So I have, there's 1,000 customers in that segment that I can run a program against. Same pain point. Your current product is end of life. The offer, and then since we added AWS, there's a value add in the way that the deal can be done. So here's why you would do it with us. So that to me would be a segment. Some people might call it a campaign, but I mean, still, it's not account based.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just say a couple things though. One is we had Nicholas D. Kachevsky on, and he had this great headliner, which is segmentation is a lost art. And that's essentially what you're saying, which is no, it's the most important thing you could do. But I would still define that as account based. Your ideal customer profile has been set against a certain segment of buyers. You're delivering because of that, you deliver relevant content, messaging, even sales processes to that segment. Sometimes you'll align resources against that segment. That still fits into my definition. So but I do think it is important. I do think the way you presented that is spot on. That's the thing that's interesting. So
Yeah, and maybe I mean by like people say I need an account based strategy, and what are our target 2,000 accounts for our company? And I don't think that's it. I think it's like there's this segment, and there's this segment, and there's this segment, and they can be different. They can be mixes and matches of each other. I think if you use the tools correctly, then you're putting the total group of accounts in, and then you're working the ones that show intent versus tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Like that part to me doesn't feel like it. I think it's evolved. And so I'd rather put, the 500 accounts in the segment program and just like warm them up hard and then build the middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel, like how you actually engage with that account or those accounts that are showing interest versus the tiering of accounts. So I'm just playing around with it, right? Like I just the approach that I learned that I advocated for a very long time has evolved.
but let's keep going because I think this is great. For me, the most important thing is targeting and having the sort of life cycle of resources, content, message, campaigns lined up against a segment. to me, by the way, it's for some of the folks that I work with, it's not necessarily vertical, right? I do think there is some. I like what you said, like, like Matt and I have been playing a lot with signal selling, and like there's these data points that if you can collect and segment against, can make a real difference in your success rate. And so I'm 100% in favor of it. So like if you were gonna sort of walk us through how people should think overall, not just about creating the segments, but then how do you roll against them? How would you describe that?
So I think we talked about creating the segment. I always power of threes, at least three data points that you can put together that includes a pain point to an audience, so you can build the messaging around that. Then I would, I think it's a little bit more just kind of continuous evolution. So testing out the messages via outbound activities, to refine it, and then building the messaging after that, which leads into your ad campaigns. Yeah, I would try it first, right? And then put it into your ad campaigns and do the warming up of the accounts in either platform you choose, demand based or 6 Sense. And then just, continue to refine. I love the lookalike feature. So once you start to see accounts surging, like go back and then add more lookalike accounts in. One of the other things that I hope people do that's not a misstep or missed art anymore is data cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, like take the time to like take the accounts and actually clean them up, get the right contacts in if you have to use an external source or if you use your SDRs, marketing ops interns, one of my favorites. And just make sure that, the effort is worth the account. So you're not just wasting cycles or wasting salespeople's time. And so just kind of rinse and repeat. Like I don't think you have to get more complicated than that. And once you start to see like wherever your goal is, 20, 50 accounts kind of start moving through the funnel, then you've got something. And then I would triple down on it and build out more nurtures and like refining the effort, as you kind of blow through the list, the target account list. Like for us in that example with Noble 4, there are 1,000 accounts that were using their product at the end of life, but they have 68,000 total customers. So it's like, well, how do we take that segment? We'll learn about the 1,000 accounts that were using their product and now apply that to a larger segment of their customer base, because now I have 400 customers that are using our product that are also Noble 4 customer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, when you think about creating a segment, what's the ideation around that? Is it, hey, we just closed this big customer, or there's something came to us that we haven't seen before? Or is it more, there's pattern matching here, and I think if we were able to be a little bit more specific to this subgroup of people, that's a segment. I'd love to just hear how you and the team at Drata are thinking about creating new segments or refining existing segments.
My least favorite is we just did a big deal. Let's make this a strategy.
Right.
That's my least favorite. Right. I'd say that's a data point of 1, and while interesting, I can't draw a line through it. I need 3, right? You need to see a pattern before you want to get marketing involved. So great job, sales. Go find 3 more, and then we can talk about putting the marketing effort behind it. That's generally what I'll say. There is Craig, you and I did a scale event on this a while ago. I do have a pattern. I do have a process that we do use. And it really is like, I would say it's more of a SOM exercise where we're testing out different firmographic and technographic data and building account lists around that. And then what I'll do is I'll build a 3-year forecast for that account list. And so you'll make assumptions on ASP, you'll make assumptions on, if it's an existing segment that I want to continue to grow into, those growth rates would be different than it's a brand new segment, which starts slow, but maybe grows faster. And so do that 3-year projection of what you think the ARR, not the TAM, the ARR would be for that segment. You can add in retention, growth, like you can add it in all these different factors, and weigh them against each other. So that's how I start. That's how I started at Drata. And And I think we had 12 different segments that we looked at, and I added a step. So this is new from Drata Times, which before we started, we did the analysis, so product marketing, revenue marketing, like built the model. And before I started the session with the executives, I gave everybody 4 virtual stickers to put on, like, where do you think we should make the investment? Which is how we were doing it before, which is how a lot of companies do it. And so everybody put their stickers on for what they thought. Enterprise had the most stickers. Um, then it was a mix. There were some verticals in there, geographic expansion. And then we went through the exercise, showed all the data. So you have the financial data, but you also have things like go-to-market readiness. Can our existing sales teams sell this? If so, it's a high score. If not, you have to hire new people, then it's a low score. Product readiness. Do we have to make investments in product? Can we create differentiation? Competitive landscape. Is this like a greenfield opportunity, or are we going to go head to head against our competitor? We added partner as one of our metrics because we have a strong partner network. Like, can our partners give us an advantage in this segment, like going into a net new region where we have a strong partner that we want to lead with the partner? So we used all those factors to then weight the options, debated it. So each owner for the line, so the product leader got to be the ultimate decision maker for what values we put in each of the options. And then you stack rank it. And you look at it and you're like, wow, that's interesting. So it's qualitative and quantitative feedback. And then we start discussing. And it doesn't have to be the top 3, but you have to pick the 3 or 4. 3 just tends to always be where it ends up working. And so when we took the final answer versus the original gut, the number 1 that was the gut was like number 6. The number 1, which was actually a no before, didn't even have a sticker on it.
Wow.
So, and they're like, whoa, where it just proves like, let's use data, let's have a discussion, let's align as a leadership team. And I think the hardest thing is like, you hire new people, they weren't in the room, they come in with their own point of view. And so you have to, I used to say you do it on an annual basis. I almost feel like you have to do it on a every 6-month basis. We use that same approach, by the way, for NRR. So when we were building out our strategy for how do we retain and grow customers, we used the same model. Awesome pricing person that did the work. She actually looked at what was on-cycle, off-cycle expansion, how many accounts were up for renewal. There were 12 options that they wanted us to do all at once. And then we aligned on the top 3, and that's where we started. Totally works.
It's amazing.
I'll put it up on my LinkedIn. I've been meaning to do it. So I'll find the scale session that we did, Craig, or the white paper that we wrote, and I'll put it up on my LinkedIn. So
yeah, that is such I'm just wondering if
I should write a book.
Yeah, because it's an exercise that can be applied to any business.
Yeah.
When you and then just generally speaking, if you end up with a segment, so you're looking at ARR or NRR as your sort of whether this segment's worth it, but just generally speaking, because I know this is very tactical, but people ask me this all the time, like how many accounts do you typically end up with in those segments?
I would say anywhere from like in the 1,000 area, 1,000, 2,000, like up in there. Yeah.
And then on the sales side, so when we decide on this, it sounds like we understand obviously you're going to roll out, your marketing campaign, but does sales then build not customized, but relevant materials for their sales process against that segment as one of the actions that you would do after that? And what does that look like?
Ideally, there'd be a playbook. Yes. Ideally, there would be a playbook. We run pretty hard and fast. So we haven't quite got to the playbook yet. It's next quarter's project. But yes, ideally, when you're building the campaign structure, you would build a sales playbook that goes with it. It may be as simple if you're like running fast and lean as the cadence. It could be like, here's the cadence, train them on it. Here's a couple of case studies, like, and you do a 20-minute kickoff session. Like, you could start there. and then continue to, just continue to add to it and build a high spot page for it for sure. Or a seismic page, like, so it has a home and you can continue to add things to it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's reasonable.
And then track it and track it.
Yeah, by the way, a key indicator is just, your sales team's so hard charging that, they're gonna take it and run with it and we'll fix as we go. That is actually an important trait. Like, sometimes we wanna slow them down, but we want the ones that are going fast and we figure it out as we go, not the ones who are like, "Well, you didn't give me this, so I can't go."
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, we're even starting with, like, here's a 5-step case, I know best practice is 15 and it should be this, just like, let's just start and learn and iterate knowing we're gonna get to that. But we call that draw to speed, like, where Adobe was planned forever, execute this much, like, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just, let's just go with an S in it. And so, just it's a different pace, which, is an iterative pace, which is totally fine.
Yeah, gotcha. And then you mentioned, and I'm sorry, Matt, I'm just very intrigued.
No, you're good. You're good. Go.
So I do think the iterative pace. So you mentioned that, well, actually, just go back through, like, is it you're regularly meeting and looking at things, or is there milestones that you want to see and then sort of regroup and figure out? So you said, look, let's get going in there and we'll see if it actually works. So that's one thing. And then how do you define that? And then generally speaking on the iteration, is that just all the different teams doing iteration as they go, or is there some kind of meeting structure, reporting structure, analytic structure? What does that look like to figure that
I'll
out?
tell you what best practice is versus what we really do.
Yeah, that's how we all live like that.
What
We
do I
all live.
recommend or what do we do? So what I would recommend, yes, is that, and I've learned this from Lisa Horner at Appfolio. I thought she had one of the best structures in this, and I've copied her playbook. And so I think you want to have a regular, check in with a crew of people, and I do believe in that. When I was at Sales Loft, we would call them the cadence committee. But it's a combination of the campaign manager or whoever in marketing is running the program, somebody from sales enablement, representation from the SDR team and the sales team, and you're checking in on the performance of the program. Like, that's ideal. And so you have goals, you have stats, you're checking in, you're reviewing, you're making updates, you're updating messaging. I love when product marketing is also involved. So they're looking at the messaging, they're listening to gong calls, or refining the messaging and updating the playbook. So it's this, every month there's an update, and it could be an updated asset, an updated learning. And so I would put it on a monthly structure where it requires enablement for the sales team. So it's not just a readout. It's not just, hey, here's this campaign we're learning this week. It's like, grab a couple gong calls and share them. Like, this is what great looks like. This is how to have a first call. This is how to have a second call. Here's a customer testimonial. Like, again, it could even be a gong snippet or a sales loft snippet of the customer on the win call. Like keep feeding it back. Put those clips in the sales channel on Slack. Like, and that campaign owner or the product marketing owner for that program and is the one that does that. Now, I'm a little bit all about simplicity. So we're only running 2 campaigns, truly 2 campaigns. So we have startup and scale up. Now, scale up has 4 versions of it, because in our maturity model, you could be at 4 stages of scale up, but that is one segment. And again, we're building it. There's lots more to do, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, because that's all we need. We actually don't need to be more complicated than that. And even the know before example fits in the scale campaign because those customers are in that segment. And so it's like, oh, if you get a know before, then this is the conversation. These are the customers that we've already moved over. This is their success story. This is how we do it. And so it's within that, it's a program within the bigger campaign.
The Transaction is presented by Ringmaster, the go-to branded podcast team.
You know, when Craig and I were thinking of starting this podcast, we had all the ideas in the world. But you know, all the ideas in the world won't get you a great podcast. That's where Ringmaster comes in. They handle the creative, book guests, and do all the production for the podcast so we can focus on what we do best, talk to one another and our amazing guests. To discover how your company can leverage B2B podcasts to deliver outsized ROI, visit ringmaster.com today.
By the way, I should have Horner do just a piece on the way it's like their meeting structure is organizational design. It's like, yeah, totally that she had that one slide.
I have it. I could probably pull it up now. It's on my desktop. Like, it's so good because it's the rhythm, right? There's one as an operational check-in, and then the other is like a tactical. And so they balance those two. It was awesome. It was one of the best presentations I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. Is there anything around channels that you've seen work less well or more well, whether it's in the segment strategy or not? That's one thing Matt and I have been sort of grappling with, is hearing from some folks that some of the channels that they'd used before are broken, and now they've made adjustments. Like, for example, I still quote the Megan Eisenberg last year at the event. She's like, "What's working well? Events. What's not working well? My old school webinars and content syndication and those things." What would you say to that? And whether it's related to segment strategy or not.
I mean, so I'll start with, I've been at Drata for a year. We're only 3 years old. We have a lot to build. We relied heavily on digital and paid. And what was surprising to me was that our CTA for top of the funnel paid was demo, and it was working.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't actually have middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel. And it just, like, everything, I do believe in pushing everything to hand raisers, and just weeding out all the rest. And because the demand was so high and the product market fit was so good, that's what we needed to do. Now, of course, you need to invest in brand to bring that cost down. I was just at Google yesterday. That's cool, a little Google badge. Learning about some of the things that they're doing. And what I learned from them yesterday is, making sure that you have your Salesforce data connected to the Google ad marketplace. And they said, those that have clean data that is helping the Google algorithm train itself better have like a 4x performance than those that don't.
Wow.
And when you're relying so heavily on paid, like, you have to. And also, when I came in, we were paid. We were across all the channels. We were on Instagram and Facebook. And then I go to our Instagram page and I'm like, oh no, it was just, we were just spreading money everywhere. So again, in the world of simplicity, I went, what are our top 3 channels? Shut everything else out. Let's just focus on those and get those working well. So we're Google, LinkedIn primarily, and some Bing. And we are doing our best to, like, refine those, get better and better at it. Look at all the performance along that. And then I'm doing that at home. The other thing that I kind of learned, and going into cybersecurity, I went and interviewed a couple of, like, Sneak CMO, Okta's previous CMO. So, don't be afraid to call on your friends and learn and ask coming into a new market. And both of their strategies were go bigger than you are. Show up bigger than you are at these events, which is really hard because there's a lot of companies in the cybersecurity space that have a lot of money. And so the choice that I made coming in was, we're not going to go to every show, but the shows we do go to, we're going to go big. So we just went to RSA. We had a big booth. Next year, we're going to have 2 big booths. I bought all of the kiosks within like a mile of Moscone. So every kiosk you walk by had our ads on them, not the digital display. I got the old school ones. So you're not sharing with other people, just on the digital display network. We had roaming cars, and like all the extra things, and just tried to own the space. And we're just talking about reInvent, and, looking at airport like just looking at it all, and just trying to show up bigger than we are, like, be big on brand. And that's how you'll get noticed in these crowded spaces. So that's working.
Yeah, my office not far from Moscone, and it was raining Drata that week, and I was like, hell yes, Sydney. Like, to your point, every place where there was freestanding advertising space was Drata. These cars were going by Drata. Like going into Moscone, Drata. She just, oh man, it was spectacular, and the messaging was so crystal clear, and I thought the branding was so beautiful. So great job with
That's
that.
shout out to our in-house. So we did that all in-house.
That's incredible. That's amazing. I love the go bigger than you are. Yeah, so Maria Pergolino's working with us now, and she's got this thing which is like at a conference, they will leave remembering 1 to 2 things. Your job is to be one of those 2 things. And that's what you're coming in hot. I love that. So like so next year you'll go even bigger. This is yeah, it's a better quote than go big or go home. Go bigger than you are.
Yeah. Or and I'll give a shout out to events and a little self promotion. So we have Drawdiverse coming on June 12th. We're doing it in Pier 27. You're very familiar with that, Craig. Sorry you couldn't make the walkthrough, but it's a big venue. It's a big venue, and so we have to fill it. And we are going to brand the shit out of it. And then we already had that network in, and then we bought everything around. And my goal is just like, I can't wait to see that room full of people, all those pictures all over, digital and social, and just, filling it. Like last year, we had our first event and it was about 300 people. This year we'll have 600. I want it to look like 1,000, but that's great for a second year. And so just keep trying to push for big.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I mean that segment on our show that had segments in it was one of my favorites. That was so good. By the way, fun fact on the Topo summits. So like none of the generic sends worked. So we hired this kid, Mark Booz. He's like an SC now. He's done great. And he was Craig's AI. We downloaded every contact that I have, and he got my email address and personally reached out to. We literally filled. So I think second year we had like 800. That was literally, and that was this kid just going through, and we were taking regs over the phone. We were like, you don't need a reg, just I'll get on, we'll do a credit card. It was like a salesperson. And then the next year before, we did, I think 1,400, same. I mean, we had a different intern, and he did the same thing. He was crazy, man. He was like, I heard him on there. I was getting emails from people because they were coming back to me where he was just like, how about you buy 5 together? Like he was like literally being an inside. Nobody knows. It's so funny.
That was one of my first jobs, by the way. So I was a telemarketer for Best Special Event when I was a senior in college. It was when they had the old phones, and it had the armrest thingy on it, and I had green and white lined paper, and so I called all the subscribers of Special Event Magazine to invite them to the special event, and that's dial for dollars. Yeah,
look at you now. Look at you.
so I started.
Yeah, no, I love it. So just going back on the digital, so you narrow it down. So Google, LinkedIn, some Bing, you had indicators that those were working better than others. And then, and so that's actually a really good recommendation, because even some of the young companies are going to spread. Then you want to figure out, once again, simplicity. So now you had indicators that they were good, and now you're continually optimizing those very specific channels is the way you want to look at it.
That is correct. Yeah. We were only doing top of the funnel. So now we're doing middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel content. So like phase 1 was like, get the campaign out there, get started, top of funnel, go. And now we're working on middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel for one of the 2 campaigns. And partner with your reps. I went to the Google office. Like, I want a relationship. I want that rep working for me, and best practices, like, help us out. And LinkedIn, my team at LinkedIn is Marissa. She's so good. Like, we got like Nielsen studies from them. They have experts that have taught our teams like how to write good copy. Like, say yes to everything. How can you help me? And if you're spending enough, it comes with. If not, then get them to help you. Like, so if you're not getting the most out of the investments, these big investments that you're making in your ad platforms, if you're just relying on your agency, which you should do, but I'm like in these meetings. I want to learn, I want to ask, I want to understand, because it's constantly changing. Like the algorithm's constantly changing, the offerings are constantly changing. And so I want to stay on top of it because that's my biggest channel right now. And so yeah.
When you think about Google versus LinkedIn, do you think about LinkedIn as more brand and awareness and bringing people into the top of the funnel, or does it convert as well as Google? Because I generally think of Google as like, hey, there's a sort of there's an active market that I'm trying to capture, and on LinkedIn I'm trying to create I'm trying to expand my market through awareness. And if I can capture them, great. It's like kind of like a secondary value. How do you think about the two at this point?
Well, you're the master at it, and I learned from you. So, and we used to. I mean, we used to advise companies like, "Hey, just start in LinkedIn because at least you know your audience is there, and it might be more expensive, but you'll have a faster indication and return on that investment that you're making if you really know the companies you're going after, and if you can prove they're on LinkedIn." So I'm always a huge fan of LinkedIn, and I think that they keep on, putting new offers in place that, like the document ads or, carousels like perform more, but balance that with your organic LinkedIn strategy.
Yes.
If you're not doing both, you have to do both. And so you have to have like really good content, know who your influencers are. We have four, and be working those in tandem, where they complement each other. There's also a lot of good, again, LinkedIn shows me my competitors' ads, like tells me what works, what doesn't, critiques our stuff. Like it's great. Like colors, structures. I had Mark Young come talk to our team, who I think does LinkedIn hacking the best. And, he talked about different strategies. So it's like, just really educate your team on that. Now, going back to, I'm constantly learning. I used to think that Google was just, you can't control Google. Anybody comes to Google, and where you can be very controlled on LinkedIn, Google is kind of like, you can't be. I'm not sure I agree with that now. Like based on what I learned, if you're connecting your systems to their network, they're trying to do um the the matching of your audience, and then you're tuning your bid strategy against that audience. And we went back to like manual on that for a while. um and so I think those things are important. Here's the other piece to the equation though, is really making sure, and this is an area that I'm really trying to work hard on, um, that you have to have your brand voice done. You have like, I worry about, spending money on ads when I'm not like there with the brand.
Yeah.
And so prioritizing the brand over the demand capture, like, is hard when demand capture and marketing, ads are feeding the sales teams. Like we're 45% of revenue right now. And so like it's the constant battle, and what I know to be true, but what, still like that balance of just driving the demand. So
Yeah. Well, you guys are in just such a hot market, and there's so many people who want what you're selling. It's so hard to take your foot off the accelerator of what's driving the business, especially when it's there and it's happening right now. Um, but I think like examples of what you were doing at RSA and gosh, what conference was that in Vegas where the
reinvent.
oh my gosh, like I was so impressed by everything that you guys were doing there too, and just like the limo service thing was such a great idea.
What was the limo, sir? I mean, you guys, you're inside baseballing me.
We wrapped Escalades. We went to a DMC that you can buy it on through the ad networks too, but we went direct and did it on our own and cheaper. But we got a bunch of Escalades and wrapped them and gave free rides. So
It was so sick.
yeah,
It was
but
so sick.
they looked really cool. Like there's some, seen other ones at different events and stuff. But what I do know is that security people do not like you to wrap the Tesla trucks. Somebody did
Oh,
that, and it got the total negative. So I guess I was like, oh, okay, don't do that. We'll stick with the Escalades. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Hey, really quick, yeah, for the sake of the organic LinkedIn strategy, you said you have to nail that. What does that mean?
For the organic strategy is what you can control. So your influencers, the influencers in, if you're working with external influencers. So to me, that's like the natural strategy of social. So we use Sprout Social. We've set up a thought leadership. We're working with our top 5 thought leaders and helping them set up their LinkedIn strategy. They already have lots of followers. That's what we picked it on. But like getting that, like, what does each thought leader want to talk about? How do we match that with articles and content and get that regular rhythm going alongside? So then engaging our internal audience now to share their content. So the content has to be there, then the employees on top of that. And then partnering that with really encouraging our customers. So we have a couple programs when they get their first stop 2, or when they get to reward them for that when they put up their trust center. So then there's like a customer activation as well. That's what I would call organic for LinkedIn, is like all the things that are not paid.
I love it. That is amazing.
Yeah. We're up to 3 years old, 67,000 followers. Our goal is to get to 100,000 this year.
not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad.
Good job, team.
Yeah.
It's wild because it feels like we all went gangbusters on social strategy when it, in the early days of frankly social, and then it kind of cooled a bit. And now it's like LinkedIn is uber critical to your strategy, both organic and paid. I think that's real across the board. I mean, Sydney, one of the things that we've been, talking to early stage on is like, you got to win on LinkedIn, man. And like, for most of them, it's the founder. When the founder can get on there, I mean, there's some really amazing evidence. I talk about Albro all the time. I mean, he didn't even get the company off the ground, but if he had, I mean, like he had built such a following by just, dedicating.
And didn't he have AI? He had AI like reading the X feed and then building content. Didn't he have some hack there?
Well, I don't know about the app, but I do know this. What his thing was, he believes in his studying that X is 2 to 4 days ahead of LinkedIn. So that's why his articles were so topical, is he's following all these people on X, and he's like, there was incredible, those long tweet streams some of these folks write. He was taking from that and doing his research on X, and he was able to stay one step ahead on LinkedIn from X. So maybe I don't know if it was an app. Maybe you would know. Actually, sounds like I should dig in with him on that. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, 100% agree on the founder thing. It has to be natural to them. I think Ryan New at Vendor has some awesome content. If you're not following him, like, he's just using his data in a really, really smart way. So I think he's doing a really good job. Yeah,
He is. Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right now, he has the data advantage, but so what? Like
create your own data. Create your own data. Yeah.
His stuff is really unique, and so you see when you see him hit the feed, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely want to, at least peek at what he's got going.
And where am I? Where am I? Hopefully I'm in there. See you, Drana.
Yeah, no, of course you are. Of course you are. The by the way, you guys, as we close this out, so I did this webinar, and I don't know, I told Matt about it. So someone who listened sent Sangram this just like brutal critique of the webinar, and he or she said, like, they spent 15 minutes complimenting each other. I hope that I didn't do that here, right? But it was important that Matt and I have been really excited to have you on the show, and like, it's like the initial sort of admiration fest, I think, was really important for us here. But that was like some of the most actionable content we could have got. It's hard in podcasts. And so but I left here today. A, I love the segment strategy. There's just a lot of scale there. And it's just easier to think about relevance on 1,000 account level than it is on a one. So I agree with you on that. Thank you on the channel specificity, what you do at events, all of these things were really specific and actionable. And so that made the show awesome. So I'm going to give this show an A+.
Wow.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But thank you so much. This is what the transaction is all about. And so this hit the mark.
I was scared to be on it. You've had such great guests with such knowledge. So I was I made sure I got a good night's sleep so I could hopefully help do my part.
I love that.
You crush it. Sometimes I get worried that when our friends are on, we're just going to talk, but this was so good, Sydney.
Yeah, that was actionable as hell. Yeah.
Love you guys.
All right. Love you too.
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. The Transaction is sponsored and produced by Ringmaster, the go-to branded podcast team. To discover how your company can leverage B2B podcasts to deliver outsized ROI, visit ringmaster.com now. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.